Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very exciting event that we're running here. This is something we thought would just be kind of fun to do. And as we put together the panelists and as we put together the topics, we came to realize that this is something really special. And I'm delighted that you could be here to share in this as we talk about this concept of bridging the education to workforce gap in community colleges and beyond. I'm George Western. I'm Principal Research Scientist for Workforce Learning in the Jameel World Education Lab, which is part of MIT's Office of Open Learning. I'm here with Christine Nolan, who's the director of the Center for Advanced Manufacturing at MassTech. And we're going to introduce you to what the conference is about and where the agenda is. And then from there, we can take off to our amazing list of panelists and speakers for the next 2 days. So who are we? Well, the MIT Office of Open Learning was created to facilitate the use of digital learning platforms and tools and teaching practices at MIT. We've been doing this now for 2 decades. We want to share our programs with the world through things like OpenCourseWare, MITx, and others. But we also want to do research into best practices in digital learning so that we can take what we've learned and share it with the world. Then we also, in addition to that, engage in strategic projects with external groups that are going to help advance the practice of digital learning around the world, and also especially help to fund what we are doing. Now, I'm part of a group within Office of Open Learning called the Jameel World Education Lab, and I run workforce learning there. And our goal is to work ourselves and with other organizations to transform the nature of workforce learning around the world. And we're going to do that in 3 ways, or we do that in 3 ways. One is conversations on important topics. This is one of those conversations. Another is content from our research, from the practice that we're seeing, and from the work we're doing with others. And last is collaborations to solve big problems. And the way that this conference came out was through a combination of all of those. We are collaborating with MassTech and others in a fascinating project called MassBridge that we'll tell you about. That's leading to research findings that we can share some of that with you, and it spurs the rest. And it's also leading to this set of conversations that we're having over the next 2 days, and we're going to have more. That's how we work this within our area to try to provoke and create change in workforce learning around the world. Our motto is getting the right skills to the right people in the right way at scale.
Hi, folks. As George mentioned, I'm Christine Nolan. I'm the director of the Center for Advanced Manufacturing in the state of Massachusetts. And I just want to tell you a little bit about the work we're doing and how the areas we focus on are helping to drive talent, workforce needs, and job growth. At the Center for Advanced Manufacturing, we're under the direction of the Secretary of Economic Development for the state. And our goal is to create an ecosystem here that helps our manufacturers succeed and also drives business growth and jobs from innovation through production. I'm going to focus on 2 particular areas here. One, of course, innovation, and then also I'll get a little bit, we're going to dive deeper into where we are with talent. When we talk about, I want to share with you innovation, what we're doing, because it's really through innovation that we're driving the talent needs in the state. We have a few different programs, the grant programs that we're working with our manufacturers and our research and academic institutes to drive this innovation, M2I2. And the interesting thing with this is the programs that we support have to align with the Manufacturing USA institutes that are shown here. So we work closely with the Manufacturing USA institutes to understand the innovation, where it's coming through, and support these very important projects. But then we also, what we want to do is we want to make sure our supply chain, our 7,000 small to medium manufacturers, that they're prepared to meet the needs of these new innovations and emerging technologies. And we do this through capital equipment. But what we do is, as we're putting more capital equipment into our small to medium manufacturers, that's going to require new talent to be able to operate this capital. So that in itself, along with innovation, is what is driving the demand for talent.
So why are we all here? want to give you a little bit of background on just what's happening in the labor market and community colleges, just to set a very, very minor foundation for where we're going, so that we can go deeper in the conversations. We have a real need to improve our workforce training systems in the US. There's a vast wage differential between college educated and less educated workers. The numbers for the average college educated, 4-year college educated worker makes approximately 73% higher wage than a typical high school graduate would. And even at the younger ages, to 25 to 34, it's 64% premium for that 4-year degree. Now, the pandemic hurt a lot of people, especially at the lower tiers. These people are now looking for work that may not return in the sectors that they lost in hospitality and retail, some of these others, and trying to find positions in other places as the government subsidies are starting to go away. But even before the pandemic, there was significant underemployment. So one way to measure this is 2 measures of the unemployment numbers that come out of the Labor Department. U3 is the unemployed number. U6 is the unemployed number plus underemployed and people who've recently dropped out of looking for work. And as of 2019, October, before the pandemic, it was 3.6 unemployment, but this underemployment number was 7.0, nearly twice as much. So a significant number of people who are underemployed, even if they're employed. Now, there are really promising middle skill occupations that are available without a college degree. And some of these can pay really well. For example, there are being an electrician or an aircraft mechanic can pay more than being a teacher or an editor or a writer, those which typically require 4-year degrees. But these jobs are not as well known as they can be. There are significant gaps in there. And the training system also needs to improve to make that happen. So just an example in some of the gaps here, the manufacturing industry expects more than 2 million jobs to go unfilled in the next decade. And the same is true in other sectors. There's a huge role. Community colleges are perfectly positioned to help with this middle skill gap. And that's what we're talking about here in this conference. So community colleges, 5 million unenrolled students. This was as of December of 2009, as of spring 2019, before the pandemic. It's about 29% of all undergraduates, a very diverse mix, and actually more diverse typically than 4-year institutions, also catering to people at a lower economic level. So providing a real service. Now there are degree programs and also non-degree programs, these certificates. You can come in and get just a short amount of time there and get a certificate that teaches you things. But even before pandemic, enrollment was declining. Another challenge is that only 35% of those who start these 2-year programs typically complete them within 4 years, not 2 years, but within 4 years. So there's work to do to help these students when they do come in to get out and earn the benefits from what they're doing. So one of the opportunity though for community colleges, in addition to improving the rate of getting people through the programs, is it's a significant opportunity for students returning later in life, for those who have stopped out, who have left a program for a couple of years, whether it was undergraduate or community college. Community colleges tend to be a tremendous opportunity for them to get a degree that they can turn into a job, and also for continuous lifelong learning. So that leads us to how we started working together, Christine's team and our team, and that also lays the foundation for further discussions in this conference.
Great, thank you, George. So, I gave you just a small sprinkling of what Massachusetts is doing to support innovation and advanced manufacturing through some of our grant programs. But then what is it that we're doing in the talent area and workforce development? And that's where MassBridge comes in. MassBridge, it's a federal initiative. It's creating a training curriculum around advanced manufacturing. And when we look at this image here, I know there's a lot here. When we start at the bottom, we're looking at our traditional curriculum that currently exists at our vocational schools and our community colleges, teaching students that are just entering the field of manufacturing or advanced training in things such as CNC, welding, and core manufacturing skills, also up-leveling some of the talent that's already out there. So, and we have a program that supports that, right? It's getting people into these programs and into our community colleges for some of this training. And we have grants that support that. But then we looked at, well, what's the need with these new innovations coming out? And that again, line back to the Manufacturing USA Institute, what are the skills that are needed there? And so that's where we've really done a deep dive alongside with our partners, such as MIT and the community colleges and our workforce boards, what and industry, what is it, what do we need to get this talent in these areas, in these emerging technologies? So we're not teaching the specialized skills such as robotics or functional fabrics or 3D printing, but we're looking at the common core skills that'll make it easier for people to get these specialized skills. It's that extra way of thinking and problem solving, so they're ready for these jobs that we're really targeting within MassBridge. And so what are the activities of MassBridge? Well, there was benchmarking, right? Identifying some of the best practices. And George is going to go into that in more detail shortly. Road mapping, key area here. This was the deep dive with industry to understand their needs. What were the core skills across industry that's going to prepare our future workforce to be ready? Awareness and marketing go together. Like, as so many of you know, people are just not looking at manufacturing right now as an ideal career choice. So how do we create awareness and market that out, that it's worth considering, that it's a good job, good paying job, benefits, there's career pathways available to them and opportunities for growth. So there's a lot of focus on that. And then of course, curriculum development. We're going to be piloting the program in the fall at one of our community colleges, making adjustments as needed. And then we'll launch, evaluate that and then launch an expansion starting in Massachusetts and then beyond. This is a template that we're working to create that others can take from us, modify as needed to meet their needs as a state, but then using this as a template to drive these programs within your own states.
So as I mentioned, MassBridge is how we got started on this project, benchmarking advanced manufacturing learning across the country, but it's certainly not just manufacturing, it's other areas. What we do want to do is share some ideas that came out of the research for the manufacturing side, because that may be also relevant if you're teaching healthcare or other topics like that. So what we did in the benchmarking effort, we benchmarked curriculum, 33 associate degrees, 21 certifications and competency models that were about these advanced manufacturing techniques that Christine talked about. But we also benchmarked delivery models with 26 interviews with organizations from educators to employers to industry machine providers to credentialing organizations. And what we found, first of all, was there's a different set of skill. Those middle skills that Christine talked about, they are different from what is in a traditional learning. So for example, here, these foundational skills for manufacturing are what you'd expect: how to read blueprints, what manufacturing processes look like, quality, safety, how to run CAD and CAM. Those are being taught well in community colleges around the country, but more is needed for these more advanced manufacturing occupations. We see the more in two elements based on our interviews and our analysis of the curriculum and the credentials. Number one is moving from following the rules to helping to troubleshoot and improve the way things are working. So understanding more about instrumentation, troubleshooting, maintenance, a little bit about programming. And robotics, this is not going to teach you how to code robots in the top way, but at least enough about robotics to understand how they work. That's so you can move from following instructions to maybe fixing things if they break, maybe even having some suggestions to do more. But then there's another level that takes off from there. And these are what we're calling the level 2 skills. This is the ability to understand and to do real analysis, to optimize what's happening, maybe even to implement new processes that are going on, along with the manufacturing engineers are there. So data, computer skills, probability and statistics, understanding process control, and scientific communications, being able to communicate with the engineers and the scientists so you can jointly arrive at solutions rather than just following instructions. So one of the things we're going to do in MassBridge is talk about these higher order skills, these bridge skills that should enable you to do any of those advanced technologies. But in addition, we have recommendations that came out from the work for how to improve the training system. And we have 16 recommendations. Some of them are this: the why and how, not just the what. We want to be able to move from direction follower to systems thinker. This need for human skills is critical, not just showing up on time, which employers actually worry about when they're hiring people, but can you do critical thinking, adaptability? Modular curriculum that you can reassign for different areas, incorporating work experiences into the learning so people come ready to work, not just having learned from their books or their labs. Industry credentials, providing good signification of what skills you have, and also providing interesting on-ramps and off-ramps into the program for people that want to come and go in their learning. We want to improve collaboration between schools and also with the employers themselves. And we also want to make sure we reach incumbents workers, not just the new entries, through stackable credentials, through employer collaborations, through short programs. So we have a little poll to offer here to see how things are going for you. So Nina, if you can pop that poll up here, can you think about the workforce learning, this middle school learning program that you know best? Which of these 7 things do your programs do? And you can select 0, 1, 2, up to 7, whichever ones you're already doing in your program. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll just make this a quick poll. Everybody jump in and provide your answers. Okay, Nina, let's see how the answers look. All right, so we have a real spread of answers here. Certainly, leading by a nose is including professional and human skills, not just the technical ones. That's great. You know, there's that story out there. People get hired for hard skills and fired for soft skills. It's good to see your programs are included some of these human skills in there. Coming in very close is collaborating well with employers and other schools. And we're seeing very different levels of collaboration, from occasional meetings to a really intense collaboration where the employers are taking a real responsibility to provide good requirements and also to provide these learning opportunities. And the schools themselves are also linking across schools in great ways. So you can decide what level you're doing that collaboration at. Incorporating work experiences, this is a surprise because many of the programs that we interviewed are not doing this. Now they are doing labs, they're doing work-like problems in the labs, but actually getting people out there in their training courses and incorporating internships and apprenticeships, we're not seeing as much as this survey indicates. And so I think that's an important thing to think about as we go through the discussions for the next couple of days. So thank you for providing your inputs here. Notice that last one though, only 30% saying you're going for incumbents and the new entrants. I would assume that means that you're helping the people who come pretty much straight from high school, the young people who can give you the 2 years, but the people who have been out and need some retraining are not getting quite the same attention. And that's also worth thinking about over the next 2 days in our discussions.
So what are we here for today? For over the next 2 days, I should say. We're talking about bridging the gap between education and workforce needs, and the importance and the role that community colleges from across the country can play. From my perspective, I've been here talking to you about manufacturing. You know, I love manufacturing. It's my area of focus, and we've learned a lot about the training ecosystem in manufacturing. But when you take a look at this chart here, you know, manufacturing is only the 6th largest employment sector in the United States. And there are other sectors that are just as important and maybe more important. Specifically, I can point out areas such as professional and business services, which will include areas like coding and accounting, and of course, healthcare. We've deliberately designed this program today so you think beyond manufacturing and to cover our most important sectors.
So we do have just a terrific agenda here, starting from, of course, this amazing introduction we just did, but going on from there to talk about some real experts talking about this challenge from many different angles. Number one is going to be the changing face of community college educator, and we have senior administrators from 4 schools around the country to talk about how they are innovating and changing their curriculum. Following up that, we have policy with one of our leaders from our Assistant Secretary for Career Education leading a discussion with the head of a major nonprofit and the head of DoD's Mantech, or a leader from DoD's Mantech, and also the undersecretary in the world to talk about what education policy means in this world. After that, we'll take a cross-industry look. We talked about manufacturing, but there are others. Christine mentioned the other ones that are there. And so we'll have people talking about healthcare and IT, as well as manufacturing. And we'll end today with a keynote from 2 of my open learning colleagues, Bill Bonvillian and Sanjay Sarla, about a brand new book that they've just released on workforce learning. That leads into tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll pick it up again, and we'll focus in our first session on manufacturing from the training side from many different angles. Then we've got this wonderful session coming up with students and how they see their process of having gone through the training and moving into work from there. Our keynote for tomorrow is Celeste Carter, who runs the ADE program at NSF. Those of you who are in the collegiate world, the community college world, know the importance of the program that Celeste runs, and I'm delighted that she can be here. And then we'll finish our last one with a session on collaboration across the state between agencies and schools and between schools to get there. So you see this tremendous set of topics. I hope you can stay around for all of them and just engage in the learning here. Hopefully it'll give you some ideas to use on your own as you improve either side, whether you're an employer or an educator or a policymaker, as you think about how to improve the training systems for these middle skill jobs in your area. So to kick us off for the rest of the sessions, I want to introduce Steve Carson. He runs operations for Jamil World Education Lab, and his team is doing all the behind the scenes to make sure that all the complication of the technology is working for all of us. So Steve.
Hello and welcome from the technical team. It's a pleasure to see so many people here joining us today. Just a few technical notes for you. We are using the webinar version of Zoom, so it's not the familiar meeting that you've had for the last year and a half. So we'll talk a little bit about those features. But first, I wanted to note that this is being recorded. So please, if you're concerned about having your comments shared, do know that we're recording these. For tech issues, please just put a note in the chat box at the bottom. We do have English subtitles available also at the bottom of the screen if you click on the CC Live transcript button. And this option for some of you may be under a More button. So if you don't see it immediately, just look under the More button. So one of the differences between the meeting and the webinar version of Zoom is that we have both a chat and a Q&A feature. So if you're asking questions of the panelists, please be sure to put that in the Q&A feature. In the Q&A, you can also vote up other people's questions. So if you see a question that you would like to see answered, you can just add a +1 or a thumbs up to it. And if you have more to share, we wanted to point out that we're also using a service called Padlet, which is a collaborative board where you can post things. So if you go to bit.ly/MassBridge_Padlet and just look for the red X on there, you can add a post, share a link, make a comment, start a thread of a discussion. So we encourage you to join us there on the Padlet as well. It looks like Nina just shared that in the chat, that link in the chat. So please feel free to share comments there. With that, I'd like to turn the stage over to the moderator for our first panel, Eve Solomon Fernandez. Eve?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so delighted to be with you. That was such a great introductory panel, and just some great insights that you shared there with us, George, and the rest of your co-panelists. I am delighted to be here with you with an extraordinary panel of folks. We have with us Matthew Jennison, who is the Vice President of Business and Workforce Solutions at Gateway Technical College. We also have with us Terry Burgess Sandhu, who is the Director of Talent and Business Innovation at Lorain Community College, and Kathy Wrench, who is the Associate Vice President for Strategic Academic and Workforce Initiatives in Massachusetts at Quinsigamond Community College. Welcome. We will just go straight into the Q&A, and I'm sorry, I'm in a shared space today, so you see that light above me, and I hope it's not too much of a distraction. Oh, thank you, Terry. That was a great suggestion there. Wonderful. Well, the title of our session today is one that is very intriguing, the changing face of community college education, and we will be talking about what the implications of that are. As we start, we will have each of the panelists, as they answer the first question, will give us a little bit of an insight about what they do at their work. So if we can ask you, Matthew, to start us with the first question, which focuses on the concerns that we were seeing before the pandemic about the future of work, and seeing those beginning to shape conversations about how community colleges are approaching their work and how we are responding to student needs. In your opinion, what has been the effect of the pandemic in this realm? We know we've seen different ways, modalities of serving our students, and seeing those students also changing, the digital natives, as well as the boomers, as well as the Gen Xers, the middle generations that are there. Can you give us a sense of what you are seeing in Wisconsin, if we can get you to start us off, Matthew, and also give us a little bit of an insight about what it's like for you on the ground right now in Wisconsin?
No, thanks, Eve. Really appreciate that. Happy to be here with everybody. Yeah, quite a year we've had, right? I got to test out a lot of things that, maybe we thought would work, and now we get to see how well they did work in kind of a virtual environment. But for my role as the Vice President of Business and Workforce Solutions at Gateway, I kind of am the bridge between kind of the credit and non-credit side of our institution. So I do a lot of customized training with our local business and industry. But I also run in a customized way some academic programming, very specific to some high demand fields in our area. One of those being automation robotics, another one being CNC, but really whatever employers bring to us and need, I'm kind of the person that tries to organize a college to be able to meet that demand in a very quick way. Plus we have the pipeline from our regular academic programs and technical programs in the college. So from a pandemic perspective, kind of before, after, and during, before the pandemic, we had an unemployment rate that was like sub 3%. So there was a labor shortage, and everybody's scrambling for talent. And now that the pandemic is somewhat subsiding, we are now getting back down to that sub 4% and getting closer to 3% unemployment. So really the problems are kind of coming back, but now in a slightly different way. Just because, again, the participation rate, which we kind of talked about a little bit earlier in some of the other presentations, how do we get these people to re-engage into the workforce in different areas? And we've learned some things through the pandemic. It focused how important the hands-on training that you get at a community and technical college really is. Those are the skills that the students really need, and why they seek out a technical community college program. But also there was some blended and virtual things that we probably would have said would never work and wouldn't have a place in our area, 24 months ago. But obviously the last 18 months or so, we've shown it can not just work, it can actually work really well. So going forward, I think the important part for all of us is to look at what worked and integrate new technologies and new modalities for that flexibility where we can, but also, to stay true and to what really got us to where our students come from again. And it is really because of that hands-on training to where they can seamlessly go from education to those actual workplaces and do the jobs and provide the skills that the employers in our area so madly need right now.
Thank you, Matt. Terry, I know you've been giving these issues a lot of thought from our prior conversations. We would love to have you chime in here.
Sure, thanks. And really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you. You know, at Lorraine County Community College, we've been focused on the future of work well before the pandemic, as I'm sure many of you have. And you know, what we've seen, of course, is just the huge acceleration of the pace of change and increased urgency for shaping our best response. You know, we know it's exacerbated disparities between those who are in jobs that either do or don't lead to a living wage or have a clear career path, and has had a disproportionate impact on women and others in our community that really just underscores even more the importance of engaging all of our neighbors in the future of work conversations. And of course, now, as Matt was saying, we see this huge impact on our employer partners, where they just have these critical gaps that are going unfilled, some of which was before the pandemic, and now it really is very critical. So we're doing all the things that I'm sure many of you are doing, but there have been some unique, you know, changes that we've seen really that have highlighted from the pandemic. We know we have to remain agile and responsive as we pay attention to what we're learning from all of this. So certainly continuing to work with all of our industry economic workforce development partners, that's a theme you will continue to hear, so that we understand who needs to be retrained, who's changing careers, where do they have their most critical needs. All across the board, expansion of innovative earn and learn models, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. One of the key things we've seen is a really almost an explosion of demand for our what we call our fast track certificate programs, which we offer both for credit and non-credit, that are programs that can be completed in a semester or less. And of course, making sure, constantly checking our data to make sure, and our conversations with industry, that those certificates are delivering real value for the individuals who complete them. You know, helping our industry partners know where the resources are. There have been many resources that have been come about because of the pandemic response, and so helping them keep up. And then accelerating our own entrepreneurial innovations. You know, one that we want to mention, we have like a high flex model now, which we're pretty excited about, where faculty figured out how to make it possible where students can join a lecture either in person or remotely in a single semester, along with having an in-person lab. So it's that kind of flexibility, entrepreneurialism in our own delivery that we know we have to keep doing, and but constantly using that data to check, like, is it having the impact for our students, for our industry partners that we really want, and is it having the impact across all members of our community? So I wanted to just give, if I just give a couple of examples of what this looks like, and tie it back to the conversation around the manufacturing innovation institutes, particularly. I mean, we are seeing expansion of apprenticeship in fields like healthcare and IT. We know that needs to continue, and we work very closely with companies to help them do that, and figure out, again, where those resources are. We've also really seen, and I think this has been, we were really excited to be well positioned. We think this has helped us significantly in working with industry in response to the pandemic impacts, is having those partnerships in place with a number of the manufacturing innovation institutes. A great example is our partnership with NextFlex. We've had a microelectronics manufacturing program for a number of years. Through our membership in NextFlex, we partnered with them a few years ago to pilot an innovative earn and learn approach. Today, we have over 70 regional industry partners. We have an earn and learn approach that goes through our associate degree all the way through what we now have an applied baccalaureate degree for that program. And we just graduated our first 3 students from the applied baccalaureate program this May, all of them employed in the field. And we are replicating that approach in other applied programs of study, working with some of the other institutes like ARM. So we are working on automation and robotics, we're working on cybersecurity. So I can share a lot more about that, but where I wanted to close, in terms of this question, is all of this is driven by having the capacity to support in-depth collaboration at the regional, state, and national level. I was a big fan, as I'm sure many of you were, of the TACT investment that was made from 2014 to 2018. For us here in Ohio, that investment has been transformative. It allowed us to stand up a consortium called Ohio TechNet, which I see some of my colleagues are in this meeting from Ohio TechNet. It's a consortium of higher education focused on advanced manufacturing. We partner through Ohio TechNet with the Ohio Manufacturers Association. We were able to help them stand up, and now they drive a statewide manufacturing workforce strategy that's led by industry. And it gave us capacity to form partnerships with a number of the institutes that have a direct impact in Ohio, Lyft, America Makes, ARM, NextFlex, and others. So we're really leveraging them to help us reach new audiences, and accelerate our pace of being able to do that. So there's a lot more I can say there, but I know we have a lot to cover, and just wanted to share some of those points around the capacity it takes to collaborate, but then how that helps us accelerate and be much more agile as we figure out a response to what the economy is asking us to do and what our students need.
Thank you, Terry. And Kathy, as we go to you, I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about the collaboration that the three of you and so many others who are on this call have been involved with. And you bring a different geographic perspective. So we've heard from Wisconsin, we've learned from Ohio, and you're in the Northeast, and you're also engaged with the MassBridge partnership. What are you seeing that is different now that is also enabling us to better serve the students whom we are seeing today and the complexity of their lives, and also helping us meet some of the labor shortages that we are seeing today?
Hi there. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm having a little bit of technical trouble today, and I apologize for that. So I just want to add to some of the comments that Matt and Terry made around the incredible impact the pandemic has had on us as an institution and our future of work, as well as the impact on our students and the skill development there. I think as community college educators, we know the challenges that students are facing day to day. Once the pandemic hit us, we went remote, our students began to lose jobs. We really realized how those life challenges intensified and how much they became the barrier to students being able to continue with us. So our ability to not only provide digital technology and support, but the wraparound supports to keep students in place became really critical. During that time, as Matt and Terry both described, we expanded on many of our digital pedagogies. And as we began to offer more face-to-face courses this fall, what we saw from our returning students is about 2/3 of them were really picking the remote and asynchronous options. And I think that actually does have an impact then on the future of work for them as individuals, and also what employers are going to need to be thinking about as we come out of this pandemic. Certainly, we've helped our students develop stronger digital capacities. One of the workplace essentials that Bill Westerman shared with us in the opening there. But we've also learned about more flexible learning options. And I think, and I'll talk about it later, but I think there's a way that we can make an analogy there around the workplace and around the quality of jobs in the future, the flexibility of jobs in the future, and what our students will be able to do, and I think will be increasingly expected to be able to do, both as employees and as learners. And I would say, very much what Terry and Matt shared, greater interest in apprenticeship programs, earn and learn models, which in the Northeast have not really taken hold. But I think it's signaling that employers understand the role they need to play in order to get the kind of workforce they need for the future.
Thank you all. I want to jump to an audience question. We have Roy who's asking about the main skills that manufacturers are looking for, and he's wondering whether this is a regional or a regional phenomenon, or these are national in scope. What are you seeing in terms of the competencies that employers are expecting students to come with and the skills that they're looking? From each of your perspectives, can you chime in on that?
I can start. First and foremost, for the most part, when employers come in, they're unfortunately right now they are looking for warm bodies. They're not having enough people walk in the door to even be able to say no. So they're just looking for those age-old skills of show up every day, on time, ready to work. Getting to a technical side, if you can get to that point, for the most part, it kind of depends on the industry, but generally speaking, CNC is a big one in our area. So, computer numerical control operators and programmers, if they can find a good operator, they will invest in him or her to turn them into a good programmer and leverage Gateway and our customized training as well as our academic programs to be able to do that. The other one that we're seeing more and more right now really is centered around robotics, automation, the industry 4.0 aspects of mechatronics. They know and they can read the demographic charts as well as anybody. There's not enough people out there going forward in the coming years to fill the demand that they're going to need. So they know they're going to have to automate to grow, not to get rid of people. They will hold on to every able-bodied person that they have and keep them with the company. But in order to grow and meet their demands, they're going to have to automate, and that takes a whole nother level of skill sets for them to grow that and then maintain that.
Anyone else want to chime in on this question?
I wanted to just add, and I'm really, we are paying close attention. We love seeing the manufacturing foundations work that's coming out of Massachusetts. We have some of that work that has happened in Ohio, and that just seems really critical because we really see it again all across the board, from entry level up to the skilled workers. Right now, the critical need, it seems to be, is on that entry level because so many companies really across the spectrum are so desperate. So it really is looking at how do we provide that kind of fast track training, but make sure that it's very seamless. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, but now that sense of urgency, I know for me as a workforce professional, what has really changed is we're not over here in the corner anymore. We are dead center with our academic partners, looking at those barriers. How do we meet students where they are? And how do we make sure they can get those skills, get to work, but we've made it very seamless for them to continue, seamless for them and for whoever they go to work for, so that both the student and the employer sees the value of that continued education. So those foundational skills and getting better and better, I see we have a question too about universities. I think getting better and better about communicating that these are those foundational skills and you can get them. We don't care where you get them, how you get them. If you get them, you're going to bank college credit, whether you get that through a competency-based model, a prior credit for prior learning. Getting better and better at that messaging is going to be really important, whether you're talking about healthcare, manufacturing, IT, any of them. So.
Right. The only thing I would add to my colleagues' statements is that we're seeing an equal, and if maybe even a slightly higher demand for incumbent worker training around new technologies and skill sets. And so that really signals to us that, there's a big investment being made in that to retain the workforce that employers have while they're still searching to bring in more people at the entry levels.
Kathy, if we can stay with you for a moment, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the MassBridge partnership. We talk about our community college students changing, but really we are seeing changes happening writ large across higher education, across the students we serve. And we also know that we have an enrollment cliff that we're about to hit, and that is changing how we work with one another, how our institutions collaborate among institutions of higher education, but also how we work with industries. If you could talk about the value of the MassBridge partnership in particular, and then perhaps Matt and Terry can add on the advanced technical education and CTE initiatives that they're working on.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to do that. So MassBridge, I think we got a very good introduction to MassBridge overall in our opening session, but let me just set the stage a little bit about what Massachusetts has done to really spur collaboration among the education and training providers in the region. And MassBridge is really the next iteration of that. about 3 years ago, the state of Massachusetts funded education and training consortia across the state. And they said to us as education and training partners, community colleges and voc tech schools, we want you to work together by region to design a training plan that works across your region. Don't compete with each other. Figure out how you put together a plan that actually complements one another and provides the training the region needs. And that really set the stage. We were collaborating before, but that set the stage for a deeper and more qualitative collaboration. Now enter MassBridge, and as folks saw, the idea behind that curriculum is that we'll begin to introduce people to some of the emerging technologies coming out of the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. But we know with any kind of emerging technology that there's less demand in the beginning, right? There's less industry pull for that set of skills. And yet we're trying to make sure people are ready when the demand is there. And so among many innovations that the community colleges working on the curriculum are talking about is how we're actually going to deliver that curriculum. You know, we might have 2 students in Western Mass in Greenfield area. We might have 5 in Worcester, another 1 or 2 down near Cape Cod. They all want a particular training, but we can't each run that on our own in a cost-effective and even a qualitative way. So we're looking at really interesting models for how we might jointly deliver some of the theoretical content, do distributed laboratory exercises at our respective colleges, and just really rethinking the way we work together. And that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
There's a couple of questions there that I'd like to jump in on, if that's okay, Dr. Fernandez.
Oh, yes, please. I think Lara's question is very apropos.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think it ties to some of the other questions too around apprenticeship and the strong pipelines, because I think, you know, I think the golden future, at least from my lens, that we're trying to get to is where all of these efforts are streamlined. You know, when we talk about career pathways and industry recognized credentials, in a more perfect world, we will have clarity. For example, in Ohio, we've got a lot of work going on with what are the credentials of value in automation and robotics. I'll just use that as an example. It's a great example of how we partnered Lorraine County Community College through our facilitation of Ohio TechNet, partnered with the Ohio Manufacturers Association, leveraged work that ARM and its members had already done. We have experts like from Ohio State and other universities involved to help inform, okay, well, what does this mean for Ohio? And took a list of something like 3,500 credentials that had been proposed for state funding that the state has, and boiled those down to a list of 300. So 300 is still a big list, but it's a much more manageable list that we can then take and have conversations locally with our industry partners. Because when we've identified those credentials, we can make sure our pathways, whether we're, you know, when you look at then teacher training, we have a teacher training pilot. Okay, if these are the credentials that are important locally, how do we have teachers, whether at high schools, career tech centers, universities, that can be qualified to train those programs so people can earn those credentials. So it all ties together. And then truly, when we talk about innovative earn and learn programs, I think of that as all levels. You know, how, you know, if that's possible to be implemented through high school internships, if it's registered apprenticeship, if it's non-registered innovative earn and learn, you have to meet our students where they are, and you have to meet companies where they are. And that's a lot of what we're seeing. And again, gets to that capacity that we need to figure a lot of that out.
Yeah, I'd agree a lot with what Terry and Kathy was saying. It really comes down to, and it's somewhat of a buzzword, but it's important, that pipeline or pathway for folks. So, you know, Gateway works very strongly in Southeast Wisconsin is where we're based. So we're seeing Kenosha and Walworth counties. So in those counties, we work, you know, independently with all of our local high schools. One day a week, we have a Gateway person that is at every single high school on site. So that day of the week is now known for the last, you know, 6-7 years that we've been doing this as kind of the Gateway day at the school. So if there's ever any Gateway question, you know, students know they can go down to the guidance office and there'll be a Gateway person on site to to talk with them about that and answer any questions. But we also knew that we couldn't stop at the high school. So, while we have 5,000 to 7,000 high school students earning Gateway credit for free every year, it gives them a great seamless pathway into Gateway, saves the local parents about $3.5 million worth of tuition each year. And we publicly recognize the area superintendents and district administrators for the amount of money that they save their school district at their local board meetings and things like that. But we also have targeted programs for middle school, whether it's summer camps or going in and co-teaching with teachers to give STEM-related experiences in areas where maybe they don't have a qualified or comfortable teacher in that area that Terry was mentioning. So how can we mentor those teachers, be able to give them those STEM experiences so students get to program a simple robot and understand that, hey, if you like doing that, that can be a job someday in the future. And we've even extended that really to the K-5 area. So we do have programs that go out and, again, do something similar, but age appropriate in kindergarten and first grade. They can get a STEM or Gateway experience. And at that point, we're really almost building more of a relationship with the teachers, the elementary teachers, who probably never thought of a community or technical college. By no fault of their own, they went to school, ended high school, went to university, got their education degree, and essentially went back to K-12. So our path was never really part of their normal path. So the more they know about us, what we have to offer, the things that we can partner with, how we can support them and give their students a Fab Lab experience and additive manufacturing, the 3D printing and everything else that, again, they may not be comfortable with. That all helps just expose students to more possible careers or areas of interest that they're looking into. And then on the other side, obviously, we want to make sure that students that come to Gateway, if they aspire to do a 4-year degree, that we have the proper articulation and agreements and transfer for them to allow them to do that. So anywhere from that K-16 perspective, the community and technical college fits really well to be able to kind of bridge those gaps, provide those experiences for the local community, but also make sure that the the students that come to us, if they aspire to bigger and different dreams, we give them the tools to be able to do that.
Wonderful. As I set up our last question, which I will ask each of you to comment on, if you could take a look at the Q&A, that would be great, because my question sort of ties in everything. A number of the questions that are currently in the Q&A. As many of you know, I am leaving the presidency at Greenfield Community College to take on the role of Senior Vice President for Operations Planning and Execution at Southern New Hampshire University, which is a very innovative university, a pioneer among the pioneers in online education. And they have been acquiring companies that offer micro-credentials, that offer badges, and that are really adapting to the new world of work, meeting students where they are, providing the support services to retain them, and also packaging information and packaging education in ways that are much more accessible to students who are first generation and students who lead complex lives, adult learners. What are you seeing that the community colleges are either doing or need to do to become much more agile, much more flexible, and much more accessible to the generation of students that have been left behind over the last 40 years of automation? And we are seeing that accelerate and exacerbate over the pandemic. So what are you doing at your institutions that you might want to share with folks? Or what do you see that we need to be doing as a community college sector that you might be willing to share?
Well, I can jump in. So, I mentioned the fast track programs. We know that one is just following the data. We spend a lot of time looking at the labor market data, talking with our regional economic development and industry partners to validate and understand what that means. And then again, having those programs. And then we do a lot of behind the scenes work to braid the funding. So we're trying to make it easier, meeting students where they're at, who bring a variety of challenges or unique situations, and trying to simplify that process. So, if there's 3 different funding sources helping them pay for that, we're trying to streamline all of that. We've really seen that with the fast track programs, we see that, of the ones who took in fall and spring, 70% had been displaced from employment in the last year, and 80% of them picked it based on the job and career choices. And we were thrilled that over half have decided to go on with their education. So again, they're coming in, they want to get those skills quickly to help them get back to work. And we're also seeing, again, this is early data, but majority are non-traditional age, between 24 and 45 years old. And a significant percentage, over 40%, are African-American, Hispanic, and or Latino, where our county is about 10% Hispanic and about 8% African-American. So again, when we talk about equity and making sure that we're serving all, I know we're also looking at the gender. I mean, I'm big on that. Are we also serving women? It's looking at the data and making the data actionable. What are we doing in response? How are we collaborating? And then again, it's all about that collaboration. Like Matt talked, we do have these deep partnerships with our high schools. We have very deep partnerships with our university partners. I'm excited about all the flexible models, so that again, we know that is going to be critical, and we've got to get really good at it. We have to continuously improve at it. And so part of that is those decisions. Where do you start? Where do you spend your time? We're being asked to embed industry recognized credentials. Which credentials? When do we embed them? Because that's time, that's cost, and that's a cost for the students. So all of those reflect critical decision points that have to come from conversations with the labor market. At Lorraine, there's conversation of revamping how we do our advisory councils. We're looking at the business and industry leadership team model, the BILT model that the NSF has supported, and others. So when we talk about the pace of change being fast and the depth of innovation, and it's real. And again, we think it's no wrong door. We want to meet students. We think the more options for students, the better. It's how do we all work together to help all of us continue to be lifelong learners.
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that, because it's no perfect silver bullet, right? You really have to take kind of a multifaceted approach. So, from that, to help ease that high school transition and make Gateway accessible to as many people, we have a promise program in place that our local community has funded. So, for all intents and purposes, once you're a junior in our high school in our district, you can apply for that promise program, and looking at what your estimated family contribution would be based on federal aid, the Gateway Foundation will pay for 6 semesters to complete your degree at Gateway. So that opens it up to a lot of different students. The other aspect to other areas or citizens in our community, to connect them to employers, we do a lot of work with the Department of Corrections. So tomorrow, actually, we have a completion ceremony of our Ellsworth Correctional Facility group. That's a group of usually about a dozen women who come on site to the IMET Center, which is the picture behind me, and they complete their CNC operator program. So we do it in a customized fashion, but it's fully academic for credit. So after this, they can get hired, or they can come back to Gateway upon release and finish their work. Yesterday, we had mock interviews where they learned some of the softer skills and how to portray themselves in an interview. The reality is, in today's work, those mock interviews were really kind of real interviews. We had about 5 different companies come in. We have a dozen ladies looking for work, and there was probably 30 job openings. So it was kind of 2 for 1. So essentially, they all got hired yesterday and will be able to start working even while they finish out their sentence. But then they will have a job that will be close to $20 an hour, plus or minus, upon release, which really gives them an opportunity to now move forward with their life in a way that they really, haven't thought that they could before. So really giving them a purpose to move forward.
The only thing I might add, because I could just say ditto, is the emphasis that I think we're placing on the integration of non-credit and credit-bearing learning opportunities, really developing intentional pathways that blend those things together, expanding our credit for prior learning opportunities for students, And, always remembering that now for us, and I don't think it's any different for any of you, 69% of our students are part-time. They're never finishing in 2 years. They didn't even come to us to finish in 2 years. So that means we really need to rethink how we package curriculum and the milestones that they reach along the way, so that they don't feel that they're lost in something that's going to take them 4, 6 years longer, but that they can achieve milestones along the way. I mean, we've called that stackable credentials. We're re-looking at some of that again. But I think it's really important for us to understand who our students are and how they are coming to us in terms of full and part-time. Are they working or not? That kind of thing is important for us to understand as we structure and restructure some of what we're offering.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Well, this really concludes our session for today. I want to thank you, Terry, Kathy, and Matt, for a wonderful session, and certainly many thanks to our audience for all of the wonderful questions that you had and all of the insights that you've added in the Q&A box.